It's now 4:30 on Tuesday, July 25th, 2017. I'd like to call this meeting of the Moorhead Public Service Commission to order. There has been a request for a revision in our minutes, or in our agenda, to add an additional item 9. I didn't learn of this until late this afternoon, and I prefer that it be tabled until our next meeting, because we don't have the opinion of council. And as I look through the documents, I was not impressed with some of the things that are in these documents. But I don't practice law on behalf of the commission. So I will entertain any motion.
For just understanding here, would be making a motion to table item 9 until...
Proposed item 9, actually, either that or we could have a motion to accept the agenda as previously written. Or we can take up the issue.
Well, I think at this point, as far as the points that you brought, and I have a few concerns as well with the document here, so I would suggest that we table it until next meeting.
Okay. With that, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as originally written?
I'll make motion that we accept the agenda as originally written.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same sign. That motion carries. Bring us down to a motion to approve the consent agenda, please.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any customers to be heard? Any recognitions?
No, sir.
Any old business?
Nope.
Members of the City Council, welcome, Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Mr. Norman. We had a council meeting yesterday, and we did approve a TIF district for the old power plant site. I want to make it perfectly clear, there's no plans right now for that site. It's been reported there's been, green space or condos, but right now there's no plans. We just need to, and Ken, you probably know more than I do about it, but we just need to renew that TIF district designation. So, and last night too, we voted to become a green city. So, and it's not really a big commitment. We're already doing most of the things that need to be done to become a green city, and we're probably gonna, work on that through the next year.
So what does it mean for us to become a green city?
And just take initiatives to, save money, like turning the lights out. There's certain steps you have to follow, and it's through the. I'm not offhand, I can't remember, but it's a designation by the state of Minnesota. Mm-hmm. So it's just to save energy and just make more and more greener. And we do a lot of that right now, so.
It raises an interesting question. I see Dennis is in the back of the room. Couldn't we save a little energy if we had something other than incandescent lights in this room?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I've looked at these and thought that thought for many years. So.
There's our contribution for today.
That's a good start. So.
Okay.
And one big initiatives was the all-in-one recycling too, which I hope people are pretty happy with. I'm happy with it. And
With which?
the single sort recycling, all in one bucket, and that's going over pretty well. So, and that was one of the steps in that green initiative. So, we're going to continue to work on that through the year, like I said before. So.
I'm happy with it as well. The bucket is large enough for me to have it subdivided into small apartments.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty good size, but it holds everything.
It certainly does.
Yep.
Anything further?
Nope, that's it.
Thank you, Chuck. And I'm assuming that the continuation or adoption of the TIF arrangement also provides some type of a placeholder for more public service in the event a project actually comes along.
Absolutely, and Heidi and I made sure that was incorporated in it. So.
Thank you.
But like I said before, nothing's planned right now. So.
And I think we all understand that. Thank you, Chuck.
Yeah, thank you.
Members of the Public Service Commission, anything to report? Okay.
I will add on to that.
Mr. Regala?
he stole a little bit of my thunder, but that proposal was always also presented at EDA. And Bill and Nancy were there in attendance if there was any questions to get clarification on the work that was done and to make sure there was a notation that Moorhead Public Service did have an interest in recovering some of those expenses that were incurred. So there was an email from the city manager that recognized that, and there was a mention of that also from the EDA's executive, Cindy. And so I think it's well recognized here with the efforts of Heidi and Chuck that if there is ever any ability to recover some of the costs, that hopefully Moorhead Public Service would be considered for that. Okay. And then also what was discussed as far as some space needs for the EDA. So again, there was a brief discussion about office space and needs. So when the city manager was there, we discussed a little bit about the possibility of doing some planning, working together as far as EDA, the city, Moorhead Public Service, as far as for future potential needs of office space and different property spaces here. So that may be coming down the pipe as well to look at collaborating on those efforts.
Okay. Anything further? Mr. Schwand?
Yeah, maybe just to follow up on a couple of those on the space issue. We are in the middle of talking with the city manager about city IT expanding on second floor. City IT has about 2/3 of one side of second floor right now, and they need like the other third of that side. And so we're working on that. The budget committee is aware of that, but I think they're very interested and they would like us to do that. We would have to make some accommodations for, it's basically energy services and our IT that's in that space. And so we would move probably energy services over to, you know, our customer service area, and then IT would relocate out to our dispatch center. So we're in the middle of working on that. So, but it looks like they really need the space and they would like the space. So unless you've got concerns about that, that's, I think, the direction that we're going there. So, and then, you know, other notes of collaboration with the city, I think, like John mentioned from the, you know, at the EDA meeting, we were prepared to talk about some of the costs of the demolition. And the demolition, just for everybody to know, it cost about $3.2 million to take that plant down. Some of that was, you know, really leaving the site, what do we call that, Ken? You know, we were trying to be good neighbors and do a good job of exiting well, I think is what we called it. But we didn't have to go really further down than 3 feet below the surface. But for redevelopment, it was necessary to go to basically take the foundations out of that. And it probably cost us an additional $1 million to $1.2 million to do that. On top of that, it probably was less expensive for us to do it all at the same time. And I think that's really the reason why it was a good idea to do it all at the same time. But, you know, we talk about collaboration. I mean, that really was a significant collaboration of MPS and the city working well together, because that was big dollars. And so for us being in the queue for some possible TIF money, basically it would be to recover some of that money that we expended to make it ready for development, which a developer would have to do at some time. So, you know, I don't know if we expect to get all of that back, you know, and anything that we don't get back, that's a significant collaboration, I think. So trying to help out that area and make sure it's ready for development. More than you wanted to know, but, you know, just we were kind of prepared to talk about that, and I think it's good for the commission to kind of know some of those big numbers.
Questions, any comments?
That's all I had.
Okay. That brings us down to item 11, or item 10, if you're looking at the original agenda. and that is to approve, or to discuss strategic planning for MPS Electric Division. So I understand,
Yep.
I think they did that.
that's on
already.
consent.
It's on consent.
That's what that little star means. Okay, that's on consent. Got to work with me here, Travis. Okay. So if we could just go down to the lower level, we'll have our strategic planning meeting. You're certainly welcome to participate, Mr. Hill. I'm doing fine, Dennis. It's getting old. I saw that, we won't do the other. It's amazing they still have those up there. And these lights stay on late into the night.
You could reduce your energy by 4/5, 80%.
Was that? That's what I was saying by me. Are these all the same?
What we should do is, sit there and just go through the whole building, maybe, recommendations on lighting, and try to,
These are the same. So when you went to NDSU for engineering, they didn't show you how to pass out papers in class?
yeah, we did, we went both ways.
Yeah, it didn't work very well, did it? I get my shots in before I'm gone, Travis. Mr. Schmidt, are you going to be talking about this?
Yes, I'll be speaking tonight on some electric division strategic planning stuff. I wanted to go back and discuss a couple of our transmission items, one that's come up over the past few weeks, and then another one that's gaining some traction that I want to make you guys apprised of so that when some stuff comes down the pipeline, you guys are aware of the situations and able to make decisions on what we want to do. So. First, I'd like to speak to you guys about the 2020 First Street grade separation project. As you all are aware, it's been provided funding through the state of Minnesota to do the grade separation or put railroad tracks around the 2020 First Street area and Southeast Main area. With that project, of course, we've got a bunch of water and electric lines that need to be relocated. So I just kind of wanted to bring you up to speed on that and where everything is going and the timelines going forward with that now that we've got some understanding from city engineering of the plan and process going forward. Last night, the city council approved the engineering services for that project with SRF Engineering. The MPS Electric and Water Division a couple weeks ago met with SRF and the city engineering department to discuss some conflicts and things that are going on and how that project is going to work. So at that point in time, they provided us some information on our conflicts, and we talked about timelines and things that need to be relocated and how some of that's going to occur. And we're still working through some of those processes at this time as well too. MPS, on the electric side, we provided the transmission options, which is this drawing right here, or the one that's up there. We provided that to SRF to get some guidance from them, as they're the engineer doing the design for this grade separation project, to make sure that we don't have any conflicts with any of the routes, or which would be a preferred route for them, for us to go, whether it's option 1, 2, or 3. We've removed one of the options that we showed you a few months ago, just because of it going over a building. We just don't feel that that's an option that we want to have.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Go right ahead.
Who was involved in those meetings? Was there anybody from the city there?
Yep, Bob Zimmerman, Tom Trowbridge, I think John Atkins might have been there as well. And then Chris Knudsen from MPS, myself, and Matt Marks, one of our project engineers, was there. And then 2 staff members from SRF Engineering.
Thank you.
Yep. Let's see, so like I said, we've provided those to make sure of the 3 routes. You can see the green, the red, and the purple routes are the change of location for our lines. And then, of course, the yellow one is the current existing location. That has to be moved because of the project. And those are the routes that we had our engineer take a look at and give us a couple of options of how we could relocate that line and not be impacting the project at all, and get out of the way of it. So so we're waiting for some response back from SRF on that, so they can give us some guidance on where they'd like to see that line placed, whether it's, you know, just on the east side of 21st Street, or if it's going to be on the west side of 22nd Street, which would be just across the street from the high school there. Yeah, until we have that, we're kind of in a holding pattern. We're hoping to hear something here sooner rather than later, so that we can get moving on our construction plans and bids and things like that as well too. So going forward with that, we expect, the city expects to bid this project in early 18. Construction would start spring of 18, and then they figured completion will be sometime in 2019. I'm guessing the fall of that time frame. So that's kind of where we're kind of at right now in the process with that project starting. So for MPS's timeline, we've got 2 parts to that. We've got a distribution lines and transmission lines. Now, none of this, of course, includes the water's side of everything, but there's also going to be some coordination for the water as well too. Distribution relocation, we've been doing some work on that already. We've got a plan in place. We looked at all their conflicts, or still looking at their conflicts that they saw within their surveys that they had completed. So as soon as we have those reviews completed, we'll start working on the process to start doing boring and relocating all of our distribution lines. Now, we've got a feeder line that needs to be relocated off the transmission line. We're going to put that underground. And then we've got some distribution as well too, to like the homes or the businesses that's going to be impacted as well. So all that's going to have to be done. That's going to have a cost of about $300,000 in 2017 if we can get that completed. About $75,000 of that is boring, and the rest is going to be materials and MPS labor itself. There should be some additional relocations for the distribution as well. That could occur in 18 or 19, but due to the routes of those, you know, there's a chance that those are going to be at about 20 to 25 feet in depth from current grade. So we're going to hold off on some of that stuff until we're at a better point of boring those lines in, so we don't go too short.
So all of this will be underground?
All of the distribution will be placed underground, if it's not already underground.
What about the transmission?
Transmission line will stay overhead.
Now, can I ask a couple questions?
Right ahead.
I'm looking at these options that you have, that you presented to us today. I would assume that option 3 is really the lowest on the rung. I mean, it appears, I mean, you're essentially making a box and some 90-degree angles and those types of things. You're also in fairly close proximity to the high school and what otherwise appears to be some residential housing.
Correct, yeah.
On 4th. Do we have any concerns with EMS?
Yep. You wanna Tucker, you can.
We actually still have a policy on EMF where we use prudent avoidance to try and stay away from, well, just to avoid the putting EMFs close to individuals. And so, yeah, actually, I think it's option number 2, isn't it, in your purple line?
Yeah, that would
But
be.
I know which one you're talking about.
That would be the most impactful.
Yep.
To me, that looks like is the opposite of what we'd want. And I'm assuming everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say EMS in terms of electromagnetic fields. In the past, we have asked the city to not even put any apartment houses at or near those transmission lines because of the issues. Although the electric industry says that we shouldn't be concerned about EMS, I think that those of us who've been around long enough think that we should be. And I certainly don't think it would be a good idea to have that transmission line in that close proximity to a school and in any way cause any problems whatsoever for any of the people who are going to be there for 8 hours a day or longer.
And, yeah, the studies show distance-wise, we're okay, but understand your concerns as well.
I understand
too,
the
so.
studies are
Yep.
fairly well supplied by the electric industry. But, and I would assume, and you correct me because I'm not an engineer, that the other options that are in more of a straight line would probably be a lot less expensive
Correct.
from our perspective.
Yep. Correct.
I just think we should be aware of and very sensitive to the potential issues with EMFs.
But I'll go through some of those
Okay.
a little bit more into detail, and then we'll get into the transmission section. One other thing that has come up that, we didn't really expect to be have an impact, but we got to do more review. There might be some potential fiber relocation that also needs to occur. So we are working with our IT admin as well to get that going. We've provided some information to him on this, and we're trying to figure out what and if we have to relocate and how that's going to impact the operations of MPS as well too. So that is not included in any of my cost estimates, so that's something that would be above and beyond the 1.4, 1.5 million that we've kind of expected that it's going to cost for all the relocations, both transmission and just distribution. So,
I have a question.
Right ahead.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, but with the 3 options here, how in depth did you get during that meeting, or was it just they want to look at it first and then?
We discussed them. We told them some of the concerns we had with each option and how that could, be better or impact, the area. And, again, with all the construction, we want this line relocated prior to the project starting because, as they start digging down, they're going to affect our lines. We don't want to have to hold anything up, but we don't, at the same time, moving the line, we don't want to have any problems with, managing that line because they're digging around it as well too. So they're looking into it a little further, and it got fairly in depth in discussion, but we did provide them our designs and plan and profile so they can incorporate those into their design and try to do a better job of figuring out what's the best thing to do.
And the plan and profile he's talking about is a very detailed number of sheets that has all the poles, all the depths, all the lines.
All the line heights and things like that, so.
So it's pretty in-depth, so.
Pretty technical.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are we looking at metal structures or wood structures?
Based off the size of the line and what's got to go in there, we've looked at it both wood and metal, and actually because of the size of the wood poles, it's actually cost effective to actually put metal poles in. So it's a little bit higher cost, but the wood poles that they're using are like a class 3, class H1, class H2, so they're really large, very dense poles, so they're not cheap. So it does cause some effects. And we've actually looked at it, both wood and steel structures too. So the angles, anytime there's an angle or a corner structure, it's better to use steel at that point in time.
Let me ask you this, in terms of these 3 options that you presented here, who decided on those options?
We provided those to our consultant engineering that we hired, MBN Engineering.
So we designed these?
Yes, yeah, we didn't design them through an engineering firm. Yes, we designed them. So he took the SRF plans from about 10 years ago and utilized those plans to try to put together a route options for us.
Oh, this is one commissioner is very, very concerned about item 3.
Okay.
or option 3?
Option 2, you mean?
Option 3. Your purple.
Okay.
It's two.
It's 2.
Option 2, you're correct. I'm wrong. I stand corrected.
Are these in order?
I'm not
of
even
what-
colorblind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does it order? What's your preferred or?
Preferred, 2 or 3 are probably a little bit more preferred. Of course, green, red, purple would be cost. Green is going to be, of course, your lowest cost.
Yep.
It's not much more to go to do the red one. It actually extends it a little further, and it gets to a good
So
location.
your purple is your number 2 option? Is preferred,
Yes.
even with the risks involved?
With what?
EMF risks involved?
It's a wash. It really depends on how much we have to be away from the construction zone. That's the only reason the purple option's an option right now, is because it gets us away from a majority of that construction.
So your number one option is the purple one,
Red one.
the red one. Okay.
Red one.
Okay.
So,
I'm glad I'm not the only one who's confused.
And it's, you're looking at getting away from the construction that's
yeah,
going on.
that's the biggest.
And I understand that part of it, but at the same time, isn't there a way that we can do that and still not go so close to the high school?
Yeah, potentially. It really depends on how it impacts their design, and that's why we want SRF to take a look at it as well, to make sure they're comfortable with it in the placement that we've given them. So if they don't have a problem with the red or the green one, we'd prefer that option, because of course, it is a lot less of a cost to MPS.
Let me ask you this. Can you go to the west as opposed to going to the east?
That is very difficult because they're actually adding a railroad turn to go eastbound there. So we've looked at that and it doesn't really work well.
I'm still confused. Which one's your primary one? The red one?
The
The red.
red.
Okay, thank you.
I almost would have thought they'd have went 1, 2, 3, with one being the primary.
That would have been
but-
my thought, but I got confused.
It's engineers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
different language.
We're different.
Remember, they think that all those poles are beautiful, just so you know.
So like I said, once SRF provides some guidance to us, that'll allow us to start finalizing our designs and plans and specs and things like that. And we'll be bringing those to you as soon as possible so that we can get construction going on the transmission side. That's probably, we have to remove the distribution off the transmission line, but we really need to get that transmission line moved. That's probably priority number 1.
So are we going to put in are we going to move our own distribution lines?
Move all of
But
our
we'll have a third-party
We'll have a third-party
contractor with regard to the other transmission lines?
Yep. Well, and we'll actually use a third-party contractor to do all the boring.
The
as well.
boring, yep.
But, that's about $75,000 in costs this year.
So that's not a large part of it?
No. So the transmission line is the costed part of this project, or majority, so it's gonna
We
cost
can't
us.
go underground with the transmission?
To move that amount of line, it'll cost you another $700,000 to $1 million.
Never mind.
So, yeah.
Plus it's higher maintenance.
Yeah, a lot higher maintenance, you gotta put it in duct banks, you gotta have materials on hand. Pulling that wire in, pulling it out is very difficult.
You have an outage, we're not familiar with how to work underground, where we're familiar with working overhead, so it's cumbersome.
Well, it looks to me, if we were to go overhead with option 2, the purple, we'd be at least partially in the parking lot, existing parking lot, would we not, of the high school?
Actually, it would be just on the west side of the parking lot and on the east side of what I would call their practice field, which is just straight west of the high school there, that little rectangle between 2nd Avenue and 4th Avenue. So everything will be on the west side, away from the street, of 22nd Street there. Yeah, so again, so transmission line relocation costs would be between $700,000 and $1 million, depending on which route option we take. As soon as we get some type of guidance on which one's the best option, we'll start getting some easements for those, along with the bids, specs, and hiring a contractor to do all the work. So I'm hoping to have construction start late this fall, early in the wintertime. I'm hoping it'll be a winter construction. Works best because of the soft ground and type of foundations you got to put in. So the timing of it would be good to get done then, and then by spring of 18 have that transmission line relocated and operational before they start construction. On the reimbursement side of this, we're still working on that one with the city. We've had several conversations. Until they see bids come in, it's really up in the air whether we're going to be able to get some type of reimbursement from the city for this project. So we're still talking with them about that. And Bill talked with Bob Z again yesterday about it. So
Any
Yeah.
chance of holding Mr. Hendrickson for ransom?
it's up to you if you want to do that.
You get $5.
Well, and Bob Zimmerman did do he had a update at the council meeting last night. And, he was talking about Burlington Northern possibly providing some participation in the whole project. So he was somewhat hopeful that maybe there would be some monies there, but, getting it off the railroads is a stretch sometimes too, so.
And along with all that, there's still some permitting and things like that that we'll have to do with the railroad too, to get all those the lines to cross the railroad tracks and things like that. So it's going to be definitely interesting, so. Yep.
Has there been a discussion at council as far as the costs that are going to be incurred by the public service that we need reimbursement?
No. We've left it up to the engineers. So, but no, not that I'm aware of.
Who will make the final decision then?
I'd imagine it'd be the council.
One of your turn it on for him.
Yeah, it's on. What was the question again, John?
The previous one or the second one to that?
Either one.
I guess the first question was if there has been discussion at council regarding this matter, and then to follow up with that as far as who makes a decision as far as what reimbursement there would be made to Moorhead Public Service.
And like I said, yeah, it's council would probably have final decision, and I'm not sure. What was your second question? I'm sorry.
Well, again, the first one as far as if there had been discussion.
Oh, no, there hasn't been. And we left that up to staff, so, our engineering staff, so we'll get into it eventually. But right now, we haven't had much conversation on it.
As I think 2 months ago, approximately, we had a preliminary discussion, and I mentioned my concern of the impact of this and what rates would be, or impact on rates. And Heidi had a very alarmed concern that I was talking about rate impacts already, as far as to the point of covering these costs. So
It seemed to me to be somewhat of a legitimate concern if what Mr. Schmidt is telling us that they want to go into the ground fairly soon and remove those transmission lines. We're going to be incurring those costs right fast, so somebody better be thinking about how we're going to pay for them.
because
That's my thought.
the discussion here, if my memory serves, we would have to pay through reserves, which is an issue for us because of bonding and rating issues and the plan. And then if it's still not out of reserves, then it has to be rates, because there is no, I guess, as far as the four know how tight the budget is. So I'm encouraged, I guess, the discussions to advance quickly to the council as far as who's going to be responsible for these.
And, I can talk to our city manager and Bob too, and we'll see. But right now, I'm not aware of any conversations, and like I said, it was the staff, so. But I'll go ahead and, I mean, if it's here. I mean, we got the funding, so we need to push those conversations along, so.
So what happens if we don't have the funds to do this and we decide not to do it?
think that's a decision that we can make.
Why?
For the work that's been done on it and the safety of the community and,
Oh, we want the grade separation, there's no doubt about that, but we also want some way to pay for it.
I appreciate that. That's why I raised the question.
And if we can't find a way to do that, that is palatable to all parties involved, then what do we do?
So again, the reason I raised the question is that we need to get a decision here from the decision makers as far as how this is going to be satisfied here for the good of all.
I'm not advocating saying no to the city, believe me, but at the same time, it has put us in a very interesting place at a time when everybody knew that we had transmission lines there. Go ahead, Travis.
Correct. I mean, it's very impactful to our budget, so, and we've been trying to figure that out, and from what we've been told, they've got $40 million on a $60 million project,
Yep,
so.
they've got their issues as well, and I understand that.
At the same time, we've got to figure out how to get this done too, because it's going to impact the project, and we're either going to they're going to disconnect the lines, or.
Well, even if all of us go out there and bond for this, it's still going to be an impact on our rates. There's no way that we can get around it. We are revenue driven. And so we can stretch it out, but it's still going to be expensive. Unless there's any other ways that you and Nancy can dream to pay for this.
Well, I mean, your second example, your second project is how it typically works. And that'll be, you know, you can listen to how that goes. Because we've got the diversion needing to move our line. Guess who's going to pay to move the line?
Ooh.
The diversion.
Well, the diversion authority is paying for it. They have to. They're essentially condemning our line. And so we'll have all of those
Yeah.
issues.
Yep. That's typically how that works.
Yeah.
So,
So
I don't know
that's
if
what I'm saying. Effectively, the city's doing the same thing.
So.
But they're also underfunded in terms of the 40 million for a $60 million project. I mean, all God's children are sort of in the same basket.
And like I said, I'll check on it. We'll see what's going on.
Appreciate you. So I don't have any more on 2021st Street as of right now. We'll bring stuff to you as we have more, but I wanted to bring that up.
So when do you anticipate being in the ground on this?
I'd like to hopefully, you know, some of the issues we're going to have is railroad, because we're going to need to get our permits. Hopefully with the railroad involved with this project, that should hopefully alleviate some of those issues and expedite permits as necessary. I'd like to start construction hopefully September timeframe.
Okay, so that probably puts you in November for some contractor expecting to be paid.
Correct.
So decisions relative to how that's going to be done is going to have to happen rather rapidly.
Very, very much.
Because if you contract with somebody, they're going to expect the schedule of payments.
well, it turned out
To me, that's a priority item.
Yep. And it turned out to be a very good idea, Travis's, the commission, to approve the engineering on this, because that did take a number of months to accomplish, and
Well, we need to get this all accomplished.
so at least we're not sitting there waiting for engineering to get done.
And we can move forward with engineering as soon as we have it, because we've got our full agreement in place for the relocation of 2021st Street, so.
And you'll be coming back for specs and bids in September is probably the timeframe, or? even earlier
Yeah, I
than
would
that?
suspect, yeah, right now it'd probably be September when we'd come back for at least for the steel structures, if necessary, because those are about 16-week lead time. So usually we can get cages before that, so foundations can go in before we hit deep freeze, so
When you order out those structures, how long does it take to get them?
about 16 weeks. So,
Again, Travis, just to
Understood here.
just summarize here, so the timeline that we are going to look at is that we are going to begin this fall. We're going to then build the new line, and then once that is completed, then we'll move it over and then have to remove the old line.
correct.
And that would be done probably by the end of 18,
Probably by spring of 18.
spring of 18.
So this is a fast track for us.
Yes, it's
So effectively, you want everything out of the way
before they start construction.
before everything starts moving. And where are you sitting on the water?
We're working through some of the phasing issues right now and some of the utility conflict issues. I mean, a little different from a broader perspective in that the water main will go in as part of the plans that the SRF does. So all the underground work they're going to do for the grade separation project, the water main will be done coincident with the existing work. The big issue for MPS on this is phasing. We've looked at some scenarios on one of our main water transmission lines for finished water goes through that area, looking at what time of year we can actually shut that down. We've looked at some fire flow scenarios such that we may not be able to do that construction, shut that down from June through middle to late August. We may have to do it in very early spring or very late fall, just to avoid issues where we would lose significant water transmission in that area. So a couple of the phasing questions for the water division are really the biggest priority. The other one is the raw water line. We can only be down on that raw water line for about 7 days. So it'll be completing all of that construction in that time frame. So what we'll hear as this project progresses is more of the concerns relative to phasing and
So you're
thoughtfulness
going to
during
have to
construction.
truly coordinate this with everybody involved.
Correct.
Do we have all of the necessary easements in place for whatever has to be done over here? Or do we have to acquire easements?
We're going to have to acquire easements.
May have some landowners who may or may not agree with that.
Potentially. You know, there's not that many landowners compared to some of our projects we've had in the past, so we've had some conversations with a couple of them. One is the school district as well, so that should help out some of those negotiations or discussions that we have to have. But there are 1, 2, 3, probably 4, 5, probably 5 easements that we're going to need to acquire. Plus, you know, any right-of-way crossings that we've got with the city as well, too.
Thank you.
Perfect. So I'd like to go on then and talk to you about a new project that's come up, which I just found out about a couple weeks ago. The FM diversion notified MPS of a conflict with our existing line, and John, do you have their map? Perfect. So what we're talking about, if you look at this here, our existing line comes here and angles back into the West Fargo substation over there.
Is that WAPA?
That's the WAPA substation. And as you can see, you've got this blue channel here. That is where the plan to put the FM diversion channel in that area. So right now we've got 1, 2, 3 structures that are going to be impacted with that.
Show the Cheyenne
Yep.
diversion.
Right here is the Cheyenne diversion, which definitely is a dwarf compared to this
I
one.
see that. Let me ask you this question. What do they propose that we do, and are we able to put structures within that diversion?
We are not able to put structures within that diversion, so we have to span that. So that's part of the things, part of the items that I want to talk about. It's about a 1,600 to 1,600, well, 1,500 to 1,650 foot span that needs to be completed. This is doable, but it's going to take some really big structures to do it. So, like I said, a couple weeks ago, I was notified of this. We've provided them our easements already to show that we do have easements in that area, which effectively allows them to reimburse us for the relocation. What actually is very interesting about this project is they're actually doing a what's called a P3, or a private-public partnership, which basically takes over the complete design and relocation without any impact to MPS at all. They would actually, you know, include that design within their project scope. They would do the relocation for MPS. And MPS has some abilities to review design, you know, put in preferred contractors, preferred consultants to do the design work. So that's one option that we're really interested in actually doing, because it doesn't put any extra burden on staff that we've currently already got. There are a couple other things that we'll be working through with that as well, too. So there's going to be a memorandum of understanding that will be brought forward to the commission as well, and probably some non-disclosure agreements just to protect our information that we've got to provide to them, so that doesn't get released. So those will be a couple things that will be coming forward to you guys. One of the big concerns that we currently have is that they are going to pay for the relocation cost, but as we've been moving westward on this line, we've been doing what's called a betterment to it. We've increased the size of the line and the capacity of the line, and that is something that they will not reimburse for. So that is a cost that we would have to take the burden on if we wanted to upsize the line, which would be a smart thing to do as we go westward. Now, what they're going to do is they will do the design, and they'll put together an estimated cost of what it's going to take to just replace the line as it is today, minus having the big structures put in to span that channel. And then what they'll do is they'll do an estimate on what it would take to increase the size of the line like we have been doing, and that would be the cost that MPS would have to pay to better the line the way we have been going westward.
How much do you think that would be?
Great question. I can't give you an answer on that one yet. It's really early in the stages. And actually, timeline-wise, we've got enough time. We will be able to get a better understanding of this within the next year and be able to budget for it in 19. As we go forward, the Diversion Authority plans to put together their construction team or construction design team, and they're hoping to have that done early in 18. They would start doing design in probably April, May of 2018. Hopefully by third or fourth quarter of 18, we should have an estimate back to on the cost of everything, what it's going to cost to relocate, what's the cost to better it, and then we can be able to budget that for our 19 and when construction would occur. There is a couple of different scenarios here, and we just kind of trying to figure out what they would do. This farmstead is impacted by the diversion. I have no idea what is going to happen with that. If they do a design, they could actually straighten our line out as we have been doing as well.
I was just going to say, did we move around them before?
Always gone around. We've always gone around them. So, but what they could do is they could straighten it out and go right along 32nd Avenue in West Fargo there, which would be benefit to us because it would be closer to the road, make it a lot easier for contractors and staff to work on it.
What kind of a structure do they put up to span 1,600 feet?
Well, so what probably will occur is they will end up putting a structure here and a structure here. I would guess somewhere in the range of 140 feet in the air. It'd be a 3-pole structure. But part of that issue and why we've got these marked as red on both sides there is that they're going to have to raise the line to get it up to that height. So it's not just going to...
currently?
Probably about 35 feet.
Can I add something?
Go ahead, Dennis.
Just for perspective, if you look at this drawing, and you know, when you've looked at these lines, when you've looked at these big power lines, you know, the big steel structures. Okay, well, that is what these are right here. So you have an idea of
Those
the
like the
span.
CapEx size?
No. The ones we would probably put up would be similar in
Okay.
CapEx size.
But, you know, so when you see those large structures now, you know, so that gives you a sense of the span length, and so that's about that much of
About
that.
900
So-
feet.
So you get an idea how much taller it has to be to span a little bit farther, so that's, just, it helps with perspective, I think.
Thank you, Dennis.
Yeah, those structures, the structures he's talking about are the WAPA 230 line structures that actually are also going to be impacted. Those structures are about 800 to 900 feet separate apart.
How high are they?
Lowest point, probably in that 30-foot range. Highest point, they're going to be a lot higher. There is a lot of sag that happens with that line when you can't support it mid-span. So that's the biggest reason why they're going to have so much height on them, because they still have to clear that. The actual, if you look at existing grade out there right now, the levee is going to be 20 feet higher than existing grade, but the bottom of the channel will be 20 feet lower than existing grade. So they're going to have a 40-foot swing, about 15 to 1,600 feet in width. So it's a large channel. So, go ahead, John.
With that here, my concern is that we do not have any capacity to service that line if we should have any maintenance or work to be done.
Correct. And,
So-
yep.
So they're going to reimburse for equipment costs, or do we have people who are trained to work on steel structure at this point? I mean, they're impacting us significantly on future maintenance issues by what they're proposing.
And that's something we can bring up too within the discussions I'll probably have with them over the next couple of weeks, getting that MOU in place.
We don't have a piece of equipment to get up that tower. do we?
No, and normally with something like that, we wouldn't have that. We would actually rent something to do the work. Our linemen could do it. They could do the work. We would just have to rent a truck for a day or two, depending on what has to occur on that one.
When do they intend to have us do any kind of memorandum of understanding?
What was that?
When do they expect us to do any kind of memorandum of?
They want to, so I'm going to probably provide some guidance back to them, probably the later part of this week. They will start putting an MOU together, and they've been made aware that we have 2 attorneys that we have to have review that. Because this is both a city and an MPS function, the city's got to review it along with our internal attorney as well. too.
Given that we're in the world of eminent domain, potentially, we may want to have outside counsel assist John with that process. And maybe it's something we should be discussing to make sure that virtually each and every item that we need to have covered gets covered in this process.
Yep. So once I give them they had a couple questions that I needed to give them answers on. I'm hoping to give those answers later this week. They'll provide an MOU to us for review, and then we'll go forward from there.
Well, we may want to get somebody on board prior to that.
What the timeline is on construction of this?
Construction of this would probably happen in 2019. So we have a little bit of time, but what happened was they were misunderstood who actually owned this line. They thought it was an XL line. So they're coming to us late and trying to get it figured out. So they understand that it still is going to take some time to get everything figured out.
Pretty important part of our configuration.
Very much so.
So as they go through this process, I'm assuming that we'll be making sure that that transmission line remains fully operable during the construction period and then
Yep.
switched over on a timely basis.
As part of my initial discussions with them is that I don't want this line out for more than a couple days.
Why
Because,
so long?
well, it's going to take a couple days to tie everything in. That's normal. It happened with our opportunity sub when we've done other work on this line. It does take a few days to tie everything together.
What kind of communications do we have to have with WAPA relative to all of this?
WAPA is very much aware of this project as well, just because of the 230 line relocation. All that coordination will happen as well, and it's probably why the P3 option is a better option than us taking on the whole project ourselves. In that they kind of coordinate everything so that outages occur. Like I told them that the 230 line can't be out while this line's out. You can't relocate both of them at the same time, because that's just very impactful for us if there's something that would occur that we would lose power to the city of Moorhead. So we're working through that. As soon as I get stuff, we'll provide it to council for review, and I would also expect that there'll be some type of agreement as well too that will be coming forward. But to get the process moving, I know they wanted to start off with an MOU and how the process would go through, whether we're going to do a P3 option with them, or we're going to take it all on ourselves, and how the reimbursement and stuff will work and the betterment will work and things like that.
Who are you working with on that, Travis?
It's CH2M is the Corps of Engineers engineer that they have on staff, and they've got counsel as well too that they're made aware of. So
I think it's imperative that we seek counsel on this quickly and get them up to speed, because we don't know all of the things that go into the relocation issues on eminent domain, and effectively that's what this is. And we have to be adequately compensated for whatever transpires here and make sure that it's done right. And
Do you want us to provide you with professional services back for legal counsel, or would you prefer our current attorney do that?
Up to our legal counsel. I'm only here as a policymaker.
Has
I do have somebody in mind that we can talk to.
this been shared with anybody in the city at this point?
Bob Z is aware of it because he is on the FM diversion plan. That's how they actually got MPS involved.
Do you know when he was notified, by any chance?
When Bob was notified?
Yeah.
It was probably, well.
Or when you guys were notified?
It was early, probably just after the 4th of July.
Okay. Because they thought these were XL.
Yep, they thought these were XL until they figured out they weren't. Or somebody made notification that they
Well,
were.
XL has a line just on the other side of it.
Excel
I'm
has a
assuming
line.
they're going to have similar issues with other providers.
There's about 9 transmission lines out of this substation that
There
at
have
some
to be.
point in time will be impacted by that FM diversion.
Another item to share with the council.
Yeah, I can do that.
Huge item.
And
But
as
again,
you-
this is, we have the easements, so that does help us out in that relocation.
Well, except those easements will probably be changed, I would assume, or something will happen.
Correct, and it all really depends on the design. If it stays in its current location, it might not change.
It may change if you straighten it out though along the blue dots.
I would guess so. If we shift it south, it would change. Now,
And then, of course, it'd be back up to the landowners again to grant us new easements.
Well, my recollection is that we have a blanket easement in that area that was never really defined, so.
yeah, takes a quarter section, I think.
We have what they don't allow you to have anymore?
Yes. So, I mean, that's really the big news of the month, I would say, and that this is something that's really coming down the pipeline.
So you and Chris are in fact engaging in a race to see who can spend more money in the shortest amount of time?
I guess you could say so. I think I might be
I
winning.
think Chris is ahead of you so far, but you've got great plans here.
Well, and it's nice to have Travis on board because you know how much transmission line relocation we've done in this area, so
We've done
he's
about-
got
yeah.
expertise, and
You
John
know
does
every
too.
inch of that line.
Yep.
Done about 4 miles in the almost 10 years I've been here.
Yeah,
So,
we've driven out there a number of times for this very line, so we're very familiar with it.
Have some interesting questions coming forward.
Thanks. It is just amazing to me when you look at what they're proposing to what the Cheyenne, when you look at that perspective as for that, I didn't realize the extent of the project until you look at it.
It's
Looks like a
massive.
creek.
As big as, bigger than Red River.
Like the first one I saw the Grand Canyon, that's a serious ditch.
Yeah.
I want to remind you that the amount of water that was going over that land just a few years ago. We just hope to hell that this works.
Hope we never have to use it.
Exactly. Exactly. Anything else, Mr. Schmidt? Any other bundles of joy you want to impart upon us?
no, I don't, not on the transmission side. I mean, we could go into further stuff, but I think John has something that might need to go into closed session for.
I'm not sure where you are on the rest of your agenda.
We've pretty
This is a
much
good
gone through the
stopping
rest of
point.
our agenda, our original agenda. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for an excellent report. Scaring the hell out of the commission. We'll all go into closed session as permitted by Minnesota statute section 13D05 subdivision 3C to discuss a transaction involving parcel number 58-307-0110 in the city of Moorhead. We had originally planned to also go into closed session for purposes of reviewing the general manager. That is an ongoing process, and because two of our members are not here this evening, we'll take that up at our next meeting. And so I'd like to have a motion to go into closed session, please.
I'll make a motion to go into closed session.
Thank you. Pardon?
Did you say there would be action?
No, I didn't say anything. Are we thank you. There could be action taken this evening? Okay. So, that, we have a motion to go into closed session. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Pardon? Thank you. There could be action taken this evening? Okay. So, there could be action taken this evening? Okay. There could be action taken this evening? Okay. So, there could be action taken this evening? Okay. So, We have a motion then that we may possibly, do you want to clarify that action may be taken at the end of our executive session? Okay? That was included in your motion.
That's correct.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We're going to closed session. Okay, I'm going to call this meeting back to order. Reopen the meeting. We did not take any action in executive session. Could I have a motion to adjourn? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Figured I'd get a look over, kind of like, are you sleeping?